We're here today with Riley Wilson. Welcome, Riley, and thanks for taking the time today to talk to us about your guitar teaching.
Thank you very much for having me. This will be fun.
It will be fun. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your teaching. Can you tell us first where you teach? What city and what state are you in?
We're in a town called Frisco, Texas. We're 27 miles straight north of downtown Dallas. And if folks that are not from this area would know where Plano, Texas is, we're the immediate town north of Plano.
Okay, and do you teach in your own location or do you travel to students' homes?
I do. I teach here at the house because we have a lot of electronic gear that I use, and I use that during my teaching, and we can talk about that. I use a lot of software and a lot of things that would make it really difficult for me to take what I have elsewhere.
So people travel to you, and can you please say the name of the town again where you are?
Sure. We're in Frisco, Texas.
Frisco,
Everyone
Texas.
that's not from this area will understand about it shortly because the Dallas Cowboys are moving their practice facility here, and Toyota International has just relocated their international headquarters or their American headquarters in Torrance, California here. They'll be here in a year. So Frisco, when we moved here in July of '96, had about 18,000 people. It's now over 140,000 people. And by the time it's done, it'll probably be 500,000 people. So it's been a really good place for us to be. I can tell you that.
That's what I was just thinking. I was going to ask you what the guitar lesson climate there is in Frisco, Texas, and in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It sounds like with the growth, it would be a great place to be a guitar teacher.
It is. It's a really good place. It's always been a good place. I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I lived all over the United States, attended GIT in Los Angeles in '83 and '84. And after 10 years in North Carolina, we moved here in July of '96. As I said, it was a very small town at the time, but Texas has always been very interested in guitar and guitar music. I mean, so many guitar heroes from this area, Eric Johnson, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Steve Miller, all of these people are from Texas. And so because of that, there's always been tremendous interest in guitar. Frisco's been a great place for us because, as I said, I'm conveniently located to Dallas or Arlington or Fort Worth, Grand Prairie. We've got, probably 3 million people in the Metroplex plus, so it's a good place to be.
It sounds like it. And what styles of music do your students are your students most often interested in learning?
Well, I would say probably the vast majority of folks are probably interested in rock. Country, of course, is huge here in Texas. And then, of course, you've got blues. A lot of older adults are interested in that. I've got a lot more students that are interested in jazz these days, which has been kind of fun because I happen to love jazz. But we do a little bit of everything. I do classical guitar, as I said, because I attended GIT. I've been through all of that curriculum, and we've got all of that here. What I typically will do is I'll typically start people off with a guitar method that we wrote and published back in 2006 called Guitar Made Simpler, an intelligent approach. I'll put up a shameless plug for it.
Of course.
And the reason that I did the book is that, like a lot of guitar teachers, when I graduated from GIT and moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina at the end of 1986, I wanted to teach, and I wanted to share with people what I had learned in my experience at GIT, and found out that the way that I learned, which was basically by ear and very slow and very inefficient, wasn't a good way. I made everybody do Mel Bay for about 9 or 10 months, and that was kind of a dry text, and I kept going through all these books, and they didn't do what I wanted to do, which was present material in a really slow, easy to understand fashion. And that's why we call the book An Intelligent Approach, is that I've been through several of them that I thought were less intelligent. So we put the material in the book in a way that people can learn almost from the very beginning, and it makes sense. So it doesn't go too quickly. We don't have what I call speed bumps in the book, where if you're learning the notes, here's 3 notes on the first string, and now when we go to the second string, now you have 6 notes. Well, you've just increased exponentially how much somebody is supposed to retain. Yes. And the book uses a combination of notation and tablature. We have not 1 but 2 audio CDs because we weren't able to get all the instruction and information on 1 CD.
And do you teach both adults and children?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, it's interesting. I've had students probably as young as 8 or 9 years of age, probably for the 30 years, almost 30 years we've been teaching. And I feel that 9.5 or 10 is the magic age to start. After that, it doesn't matter. You can go as long as you want. And I've got plenty of adults in their 40s and 50s and 60s that do lessons. So it's a wide cross spectrum.
And 2 questions. What are your fees and what is your scheduling format? How often do you work with students?
That's a great question. We typically do 30-minute instruction lessons. Currently are $104 a month. So that's a $26 per half hour lesson. And we typically do that once a week. I've been through 45-minute and hour-long guitar lessons, and I found for myself that with our students, unless it's a tremendously motivated person that's working 2 or 3 hours a day in practice time, that they're generally not going to get as much out of a high-powered 30-minute lesson, and we try and do a high-powered 30 minutes here. So that's typically how we do it. I do have some folks, for example, that will do lessons via Skype. We've got a lot of students that travel. Dallas-Fort Worth is a very big business center worldwide. So we've got people from all over the world that work here. Many of them travel. So there are often times that I end up doing a Skype lesson with students because they can't make it physically here. And that's worked out really well. And so I think that video instruction and doing Skype and all that is a wonderful way to help people to get an opportunity to play with an instructor and in front of an instructor at least once a week so they reinforce the good habits and don't get into bad ones.
And do you help your students learn how to use recording equipment?
Absolutely. In fact, I in addition to teaching guitar, I also do gigs. I've got a pretty successful one-man band in this part of the United States. And so I use Pro Tools to create backing tracks that I use for gigs. In fact, I've got 2 shows on Saturday where I'll use those. So we use GarageBand. I've used Pro Tools with students. We definitely use Transcribe and Guitar Pro. I've always been a real big believer in using electronic tools to help us. In the old days, when I started playing guitar in 1966, you would get an album or a 45 and slow it down and scratch up the record, and many of the old folks will relate to that. And then in the 70s, if you were lucky, you had a tape deck that could go slowly in the 80s. And so now we simply use digital audio. It makes the whole process so much better. If I'm playing along with, for example, a Van Halen or a Kiss record, we don't have to tune down. We just speed the recording up a half step, and we can play along with that. So that works really well.
And when you're teaching, what guitars do you use? Do you teach with both acoustic and electric?
Absolutely. For example, if I'm teaching classical, I've got an Alvarez nylon string that I'll use for that. I've got a rotating cast of characters that I'm often using. I love to launder instruments, so I have a Variax that I use on my gigs that allows me to get electric and acoustic sounds. Recently been doing a lot of stuff with acoustic guitars, so I'll typically play an Ovation for that. I've got a bass guitar. I even have pedal steel. I don't teach pedal steel. I do teach, by the way, electric and acoustic guitar and bass guitar, and occasionally we'll do voice lessons under duress.
Yes.
Voice lessons, I work a lot harder than I do when I teach guitar or bass, and generally, so I do mostly of those, and probably in the future we'll ramp up and be able to do pedal steel because it's a great instrument. I've learned enough to play it mediocrely, but of course I could teach what we do, so that may be an option in the future.
Of course, you teach what you know, and then you move forward from there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, one last question before we stop for today. Do you offer guidance to your students about what guitar to look for and what to look for in a guitar?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, my background, in addition to not only being a teacher and a voice talent performer, I'm also a writer. I did a column for 12 years in vintage guitar called The Gigmeister, and I've also written for Gig Magazine back in the 80s. I have a solo blogger column that I do with the L2PNet.com, which is basically the folks from Gig Magazine. It's online. So I've been doing equipment reviews and gear reviews and all that kinds of thing generally for magazines since the mid 80s. And so I have a lot of opinions about that. One of my big things is I try and get students to get the right scale length for their guitar. For example, a lot of students will end up with a 25.5-inch scale guitar and they've got small hands, and It just doesn't work very well. So I suggest that they do that. And yeah, absolutely. I enjoy shopping on Craigslist. In fact, that's sort of a guilty pleasure of mine. Is finding stuff. I'll often buy them that way. But yeah, absolutely. And what I always tell people is that in terms of my teaching philosophy, you know, if you learn anything from the ground up, be it scuba diving or driving a car or a foreign language, you have to start small and you have to start at the basics and sort of go step by step by step. And that's the reason that we wrote Guitar Made Simpler, is that I wanted people to be able to succeed with guitar. I've been playing guitar over 40 years, almost 50 in fact, and so I wanted to do something for people that wanted to learn, that didn't want to pull their hair out, and wanted to have success in the very beginning. And I always tell people that the book, again being kind of a shameless plug for Guitar Made Simpler, but the book is kind of you know, 6757 Hollywood Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90086 in a box. And it's really GIT scaled down for somebody that's never touched a guitar before in their life. It assumes no previous knowledge. And then once we've done that, then I've got all the GIT stuff. I've got all the other things. If a student wants to learn real book tunes, we can do that. If they want to take guitar solos off the record and learn rock solos, we can do that. If they want to learn classical or whatever, we can do all of those things.
That sounds wonderful, Riley. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about your guitar teaching and tell us what you do.
Thank you very much. By the way, if folks want to see me play or they want to hear what we do, I've got a couple of different pages. You can go if they want to hear the one-man band. That's Riley Wilson, basically one-man band on YouTube. And we've also got links to that, our webpage, which is GuitarMadeSimpler.com. And they can also go to YouTube and just enter Riley Wilson Guitar Made Simpler. We've got the first 6 lessons of the book already posted online. So folks can get an idea of kind of how I teach, the information. Will it be helpful to them? If it's something that they already know, then maybe we could start off at a more advanced level.
That sounds great, Riley. And I want to wish you continued success with your guitar teaching, and we look forward to seeing you on Find a Guitar Teacher.
Thank you very much for this, and appreciate it. Have a great day.
You have the same, Riley. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.